I know things you never see. You never see someone taking a shit while running at full speed.
Come on, kid, get rid of some of them turds in the shit box.
Welcome to the Bathroom Break Podcast with me, Rab himself.
This week on the Bathroom Break Podcast, my guest is Jeff Zlotnik. He is the founder of the Meditation Initiative and also co-founder of Dharma Temple in San Diego. I went down to San Diego and did a meditation with him, and then we sat down for a conversation. It's a much different conversation than you're used to here on Bathroom Break Podcast, but it was pretty enlightening, and I think you'll enjoy it. Cool. I just wanted to welcome you on the Bathroom Break Podcast. Today my guest is Jeff Zlotnik. He is a Buddhist and has a lot of really cool stories, and I just wanted to kind of hear a little bit about your journey.
Yeah.
And we just did a meditation with you right prior to this podcast, which was incredible.
Yes, we did. It was fun. I think I fell asleep while I was leading all of you, but it was good.
We couldn't tell because it was pretty pretty amazing to kind of just take that moment to sit and breathe, and I think we all forget to do that. And you're a nice reminder of for me to do it.
That's it, man.
Yeah.
Keeps me sane, or at least saner than I was 20 years ago.
Yeah. So, I wanted to hear a little bit about your story. Obviously,
Yeah.
I know your story. I've known you a long time, but I would love to hear more about it because what I've found that when I sit down with friends of a long time, I actually learn a lot more from just sitting one-on-one and kind of having that conversation and learning more about your journey, because I've found that you think you know people,
right,
but there's a lot of days that I don't see you, or you don't see me, or I don't see my other friends or family or these things, and there's a lot going on in your life that you're working through, and so it'd be cool to kind of hear about that.
Yeah, you want me to start at the beginning? So April 16th, 1975, I came out screaming. I've been screaming ever since. And I think, for me, I grew up, born in Chicago, but moved to San Diego when I was 4, 1979. And, as a kid, I grew up youngest of 3 boys, middle, upper class Jewish family, spoiled to all hell, given everything I ever needed, wanted, and never saw my parents fight ever. They just, in fact, last week just celebrated their 50th anniversary, and, to stay together 50 years is totally insane, but beautiful. And so I think I grew up in nothing is perfect, but really a pretty close to perfect childhood. But I was still angry. As a kid, I was angry, depressed. I was getting into fights, a lot of trouble, getting kicked out of class. I was always fearless as a kid. And so that led me to, without any wisdom at all, not that I have some now, but I have more now than I did, 35 years ago. I was just kind of a punk growing up, and I was either your best friend and would do anything for you, or if I didn't like you, I picked on you and I teased you and I made fun of you, and I fought you and stuff like that. And so that was kind of my childhood. And I got to college, and for the first time, actually through a fraternity experience, I got introduced to a group of guys we were no angels, that's for sure, but it was actually a group of guys that were teaching you how to kind of grow up and how to take on a sense of responsibility and a maturity, even as an 18-year-old kid. And so I went from being kind of a high school punk to having to grow up a little bit as an 18-year-old kid and really looking up to people who were basically my age as friends and peers, but mentors also. So college kind of started to shape me a little bit, but I was still angry, still depressed, Instead of getting a fight on the baseball field, now I was getting in a fight on a slow pitch softball field, at 20 years old. So it didn't change all that much. But when I was 20, I took a Chinese civilization class, and my brother said it was an easy A, and it was. And so I took this class, and we had to read Intro to Zen by D.T. Suzuki. And so I read this book, and this is 23 years ago, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, this makes so much sense. But I'm 20 years old, I'm living college life, and so living some Buddhist Zen, monk life was definitely not in the cards.
Yeah, I visited you guys out there in Arizona.
There was none of that going on. You didn't see the meditation hall in the back of the fraternity house, huh?
Just so you guys know, Jeff is a good friend of my oldest brother, and I came out and visited them at University of Arizona, and it was
you must not have seen the meditation hall. I guess hadn't been built yet.
It was hidden back there, right?
It was right behind the keg, I think.
Yeah.
one more layer. You know? So that was college, and but something from that book always kind of resonated with me, and so I graduated college and got into the consulting world, and ended up, there was this guy, Ron Rabb, you might know him.
Yeah.
And this was graduation night, and I had my whole life planned out, and I was gonna, graduate college, get a degree in counseling, clinical psych, and become a clinical psychologist. Like, that was my path. And graduation night, my best buddy's dad said, "Hey Jeff, do you want to come work for me in Philadelphia?" And I'm probably had about 10 beers at that time, and I was like, "Sure,
Sign me up.
Sign me up. I'm in. Wait, what do you do?" And I don't even know what he said. And I just remember saying to him, like, "Whatever you do, I do it better than anybody there. So hire me." That's literally what I told him. And you know your dad pretty well, so that closed the deal. I was hired before I even stepped foot. And so what had happened was I basically shifted my whole plan, where in college I was working at 20, I was working in group homes, and I was counseling adolescent females, all who've been physically, sexually, emotionally abused. So I'm 20 years old, I'm getting into meditation, I'm reading about Buddhist stuff, I'm working with kids who grew up with tremendous amounts of trauma, things that I never even knew existed, with the abuse and things like that. And so it really started to rock kind of my mind and my mindset. But again, I'm still the 20-year-old kid. So I graduate college, I take the job, I moved to Philadelphia, and I was pretty miserable after about a year. And I remember going into Ron, and he gave me this book, Sir Magister Ludi, The Glass Bead Game. And he's like, "You got to read this book, it'll change your life." And I hate reading. I always hated reading. And it's like 700 pages.
That dude reads.
He does read. I think the book was probably longer than all the books I read total.
Combined.
Years of college,
What?
right?
It looks like an encyclopedia.
It was huge. It was like 700 pages. Are you kidding me? So I read this book, and back-to-back weekends, 4th of July weekend. And the funny thing is, I go in, I read that book, I saw Good Will Hunting, and around the same time, and it's really funny. And I know, obviously, you know bits and pieces of it, but really how connected even to your family. Like, the same time I read Sir Magister Ludi, I see Good Will Hunting, and Eileen, stepmom, says to me, "Jeff, I haven't seen you laugh the whole time you've been out in Philadelphia." And like, she always knew me, it's just kind of this fun, laughing, joking kid, and here I am in this go work mode, and I was miserable. So these three things happen. I go into Ron's office on Monday morning, I'm like, "I read the book, I'm done." And he says, "What do you think?" I said, "I'm moving back to California." And he was like, "What? That's not why I gave you the book." I'm like, "I'm done, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore, I need to go back." So I moved back, and about 6 months later, no, actually like 3 months later, I got a call from someone else in the company, Dave Williams, and he said, and this is 98, 99, so the whole dot-com boom is happening. And so I was approached with the opportunity to build up a consulting practice on the West Coast. And I remember, talking to your dad, and he said, "Look, you can work from home, you can keep coaching baseball, you can do your prison work, you can do everything you're doing, but I want you to build business out there for me. And now we'll pay you twice as much," right? And so I remember at graduation, my starting salary was $30,000. And I remember though, at the Dallas airport, after interviewing with Tom Birmingham and then finding out I got the job, buying a cigar, and I'm thinking, $30,000, dude, I felt like a millionaire. I was 22 years old, and I thought I was the greatest thing in the world. And the truth is, at that time, I was like, okay, I'm going to get married, I'm going to settle down. I can't go to school for the next 5 years and, be a psychologist and, all that kind of stuff. I need to make money. And so that whole path, starting from the $30,000, and then I'm miserable in Philadelphia. My salary got doubled back in California, so now I'm making twice as much money, living from home, working from home, living my life, having so much fun, but I was still just kind of miserable. And by 2003, 6-7 years into this path, I'm making a lot of money, a lot of money, and a lot of money, and but I was unhappy. And so one night, I'm in line at this club on Broadway downtown, and 2003, I'm 28 years old, and it was my buddy's birthday. And we're in line, and I was like, I got no patience, but I got all this money. So I knew in this moment, I had this realization in my head, and I don't mean like some outer body spiritual experience. I just had a realization that I got no patience. I'm going to pay the guy at the VIP line a bunch of money to let us in there, drop probably $200. And then I'm going to get to the front of the line and go in and pay for myself and all my buddies to get in. I probably would have spent like $400 before we even stepped in the club. And then I'm going to buy us all drinks. I'm going to chase some girl or two around all night long. And I'm going to wake up the next day either by myself or with somebody and feel like crap.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar. So I had this whole realization, and the night continued, and that's exactly what happened. I woke up the next day at noon, and my first thought was, I got a headache. My second thought was, I got to go back to this temple. 6 months earlier, one of my best friends, Kristen Shea, had taken me to a Buddhist temple. And I remember going to this Buddhist temple in 2003 and just sitting down and looking up at this Buddhist statue, and it was amazing. This feeling I had, I can't really describe it. And it wasn't even anything that was said or taught or learned, or it wasn't a meditation. It was just a feeling of being in this place. So 6 months later, I have this thing downtown. I wake up and I was like, I got to go back to that temple. So I went back, and pretty early on, there was a teacher there, a nun, and she said, Jeff, you work so hard to make so much money to buy so many things. If you don't have so many things, you don't need so much money, you don't have to work so hard. And it just clicked. You know, I've always been very driven, very motivated, and I'm really not even any different now than I was 15 years ago. It's just my energy goes towards things that are helpful versus things that are harmful. But I moved up to the temple. I spent almost every day there. I didn't move in the temple, but I was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You know, like I want to go to the Buddhist classes every day. I want to go to temple every day. I'll be president of the Western Sangha and build a Western English-speaking community at your Buddhist temple. And I'll give up my fat downtown loft lifestyle, but I still want to have my convertible, and I still want to have my own
on my terms,
apartment, right? Yeah. So it was a slow 2-year transition where I told myself I'm going to get to making money and spending money to making no money and spending no money. So it took me 2 years, and by 2005 I was pretty much make no money, spend no money, very little. And then the nun, Venerable Yizhur, said, Jeff, do you want to move to our monastery in Taiwan? So I was like, absolutely. So I kind of packed up and moved to Kaohsiung, which is southern part of Taiwan, and Fo-Guang-Shan, and lived basically Zen monk life for 11 months in a male Buddhist college. So you live like the gray shirt I had on earlier in the pants. You know, you have two pairs of those. You wash them by hand in a bucket. You know, you got no money, you have no keys, you have no wallet, you have no phone. You're just every day living with Buddhist monks and nuns and learning how to take care of a temple and be of service to the people who show up. And after 11 months of that, about 9 months in, the Venerable Yizhur said, how are you doing? I said, I'm great. I love it. I don't ever want to leave. And she's like, it's time for you to go back. And I was like, no, wait, wrong answer. I hate it here. It's miserable. Life sucks.
I haven't learned anything yet.
I haven't learned anything. I'm such an idiot. And so she said, you need to go back and figure out how to integrate what you've learned into the community you're from. People, place, everything. And so what didn't make sense to me then, which clearly makes sense to me now, is that me being in a monastery in Taiwan was an escape. It was a beautiful escape. You know, I didn't have to worry about any of the stresses and pressures of daily life. I could just focus on cultivating my mind and trying to be patient and slow down and learn Buddhist teachings. And so there were a lot of really beautiful experiences in that environment. But that's not what I was brought into this world to do. That was removing myself from all the chaos of everyday life. So she said, yeah, you're ready. Go back to the chaos of everyday life. So February 05, January 06, I'm in Taiwan. And then came back, and for the first kind of 4, 5, 6 months, floated around, did a few different things, Dharma Center here. First went back to the temple there, but I really saw what I call like a revolving door, which really brings to the Dharma Bum world, is that I would see all these Western people want to learn about Buddhist practice, but they go in and they see the bowing, the chanting, the robes, a lot of the cultural stuff that turned people off. So they go in once and they're like, yeah, that was cool, and they never go back.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, there's an essence to what the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, just some dude was teaching that is so beautiful that if we could actually teach it in a manner where Western people can apply it to their life, this is going to be a great thing. So we came together at the end of 06, a couple of us, and we started the Dharma Bums, and initially Dharma Bum Center, now Dharma Bum Temple. And so for the last 12 years, basically my practice has been bringing the Buddhist teachings to local people. And as you've heard me say already a few times, you know, we'll have 70, 80 people here for meditation, and none of them are Buddhist. They're Christian, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, pagan, and we're just trying to get them comfortable integrating, you know, into a happier, healthier way of life. So a lot of history kind of brings up to where we are now, but it's been, you know, and obviously each one of those little comments has
Yeah.
3 hours of story behind it, so I
Yeah.
tried to skip through it. But it's been an incredible journey, and what I've learned, I think most importantly, is that actually, as I said earlier, I don't expect anything from anyone ever, and I don't expect anything from anywhere. I just try to bring what I've learned from this practice into my everyday life and be present with people, and hopefully it'll impact their life.
Yeah, no, and that's an amazing way to live. And I, my story is that I'm in recovery and have been doing this for a good while, but realize that I have a heck of a lot more to learn.
Yeah.
And it's like working towards that, working towards being able to have no expectations, and working towards being able to cease fighting anyone and anything. And that's, for me, a work in progress, because like they say, progress, not perfection. I will never be perfect, but will continue to work towards being a better version of myself.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the meditation initiative.
Sure.
Because I know you do some amazing work with people in prisons, and people that are incarcerated, as well as some of the military and some of the people that have experienced some severe trauma.
Yes. Yeah, so that in 2007, so I come back in 2006. In 2007, I've got a friend of mine who's a counselor at a local school here, and she says, Jeff, I know you're into meditation. Can you come into our school and share meditation with our kids? And I'm a Jewish kid in San Diego, and so I was like, okay, yes, I can bring meditation in, but I can't tie it to any sort of Buddhist stuff, because you just can't do that. So ironically enough, if I'm a Buddhist going into a school doing something, then that's a no-no. But if I'm just a Jewish kid from Del Cerro, everyone's like, fine.
Hey, come on in.
It's just another Jewish kid,
Yeah.
And so I kind of created my own way of bringing simple meditation, dealing with stress, anger, anxiety, sadness, depression for emotional, mental health, and well-being. And I started in 2007 doing a simple 5-minute meditation practice with these kids, and I noticed how transformative it was for them. And then I started a Friday morning moms group, predominantly Hispanic, Spanish-speaking women, and it was crazy because at that time I would lead the meditation and it was translated into Spanish.
Oh, nice.
My Spanish is not that great. And so here I am for the first time leading it in a school, and then with the moms, and they were translated to Spanish, and it worked just the same. So back then I was like, wow, this is really simple. Like, in a world today where meditation has become so complicated for so many people, I just simplified it, And so 2007, is that inside here? Is that beeping? No, we'll find out.
Yeah. Hopefully the smoke comes in. Yeah.
And so 2007, when I started that, it just caught on. And then I started at one school, and they said, another parent had to get at a different school. So by 2009, I found myself in 25, 30 places a week: schools, prisons, hospitals, cancer clinics, victims of abuse, domestic violence, Catholic charities, Christian youth groups, Jewish family services. 2009, 10, started within the veteran population, wounded warriors, active as well, coming back with PTSD and TBI, traumatic brain injury, so explosive blasts. And
I know something about that. I got a brother that that has experienced a lot of that, And
yes.
And it's hard to watch. Kind of, I didn't experience it myself, but it's hard to watch someone you love going through post-traumatic, because it is it's real. It's a real thing. That's quite a life to have to walk through. That can take me down a whole nother path. But it's amazing to see, and you got to see firsthand what just the meditation can do for so many issues.
Yeah, this was OASIS, which was the Navy's first residential treatment program for active military members with PTSD and TBI, which is beautiful that they're acknowledging it and addressing it, which generations back it wouldn't have been the case. But at 3 different naval hospitals and naval bases here in San Diego, again, very different from the Buddhist Dharma bum world, but just in a secular mindfulness manner of helping them deal with the stress and anxiety. But to see, as well as within the recovery worlds in the military, dealing with substance abuse programs there, seeing how much the meditation practice in itself can impact them learning to stay present, and knowing that these folks, they're dealing with family members, they're dealing with children, they're dealing with so many other levels of stresses and pressures that are very different from them when they're actually in combat, and to have to come back to this world I've always said to them, I've never been in your shoes. I don't know what it's like to be in your shoes. I know what it's like to be angry and depressed, but I don't know what it's like to do what you've done and to come back here. So I can only go so far with helping them because I can't experience their experience.
Yeah.
But I've seen it drastically change people's lives.
And a cool thing, I think, I just had that thought that, like, by you kind of showing them, they can show others, and if they can relate to their brothers and sisters that have gone through those things, they can help one another, and I feel like you can have that connection, because there is such a deep connection with the military, especially, like, I recognize that with my brother and his friends. They're almost more connected than he and I are.
Yeah, it's a family. Yeah. It is such a close-knit family, and there's a guy, Joe, good friend of mine over the years, who actually started out as a patient in Oasis. And the funny thing is, we met every week for 10 weeks. And when we reconnected a few years back, he's like, yeah, I met you once. And I'm like, no, Joe, it was actually every week for 10 weeks. But he was so far gone and so doped up and on so many meds and in such a bad place that he didn't recall any of it. Well, his life has drastically changed from meditation. And now we work together where he goes into the military population and has gone into the... So it is exactly that. It's one thing for me to lead, these men and women, but for him who's gone through it with them and to turn to them and say, look, so I do basically train the trainer with the meditation initiative, where I train people, whether it's military, whether it's prison, whether it's teachers teaching students. I train the individual how to lead a 5-minute meditation. And I did that in prison to lead train the trainer with 7 men in a prison here in San Diego of all different races and all different gangs and all different affiliations, and then to have them go in and actually lead the rest of the inmates in a peer-to-peer manner was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. On the outside, these guys are literally killing each other, and on the inside, they're leading each other in meditation. It's mind-blowing. Man, it's such a cool thing. I would love to experience just kind of witnessing that, because when I just even doing the meditation with you today with 80 people in here, it was just neat, and little things you touched on, just everyone's kind of in their own place, even in their own mind, and to see, like, how it does. I mean, it really helps, and it was neat to kind of experience it with you, because I know that when I first started trying to meditate, I was hypercritical of myself. I'm supposed to sit here completely still, and I'm supposed to breathe this way, and I'm supposed to do it this way because this is the way, and like, I'm not that guy. I'm a fidgety guy. I'm like, itching. I'm itching. I got this going on. And you addressed that in the beginning and said, hey, there's no proper way. If your leg is sore, move your leg. If there's this, and I'm like, yeah, man, that's like a cool feeling, because I think with a lot of things in life, it's really nice when someone encourages you when you're first starting out, because it's very rare, and I'd almost go as far as to say that there's never a circumstance where someone is great at something right off the bat. Right, exactly. And if they are, it's because they've been practicing behind closed doors, and then they show you, like, yep, first time, nailed it, and... you never see me dunk, have you? Yeah, exactly. Floating up there to the rim. But it is nice and encouraging to kind of be a part of that. And I mentioned to you that I've been meditating, and I've been doing it for the last 60 days, and I have noticed a difference. You also pointed out, like, don't expect to float away. Definitely. Like, the first time you're doing it, you're not going to wander out and be, this whole new world, and everything's changed, and it helps to kind of weather the storm of life. And so for me, but over the course of 60 days, I have noticed that I enjoy it and I look forward to it. Right. And it does help to settle my mind, preparing myself to go out to my day. And then as I go out to the day, there's a little reminder in the day why I'm doing that in the beginning and the end of my day, because there's little things that will come up and you go, huh, that's what this is all about. Catch it. Yeah, it's just been really neat to kind of experience that. And so I thought it was cool that my wife and I got to come down and enjoy some meditation. It's to me, one of my biggest thrills is, like, okay, with the meditation initiative, I love it because I go into places that wouldn't necessarily be seeking it. Right? So obviously if you're in prison, you're probably not going to an outside meditation place, right? And a lot of people in the military world or in the schools or whatnot, they're not going to go looking for it. So when I bring it into them, I know that a lot of them are maybe doing it for the first time. If you come to a place like this, you've obviously chosen, unless you got dragged here by somebody, right?
Yeah.
Which happens once in a while.
Yeah.
Like you need this really bad. So you should come. But for the most part, when you come to a place like this, you've chosen. But when you're having it brought to you, and I do a lot, again, in the educational system with administration and staff and Superior Court judges and things like that, where most people haven't done it. What you were just talking about is it's cutting through. Somebody at Sharp Healthcare a few years ago said, Jeff, thank you for demystifying meditation. Because we come from a world where maybe it comes from the 60s and you got the whole TM type thing and there's a lot of drugs around it or these magical experiences. So my standard line always is nothing's going to happen. You're not going to float. You're not going to have any mystical magical experiences. You're not going to figure anything out. You're not going to think nothing. That's the biggest thing.
Right.
People have never done it. Like, all right, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to think nothing. They're like, think nothing, think nothing, think nothing. They're like, well, this sucks. This doesn't work. And then they give up. So just like you explained earlier, so many people, and that's my biggest rush, as I was starting to say, is getting people who've never done this to understand it's just sitting and breathing and to not judge it, right? You can't, and that's what for meditation or Buddhist practice or both, you mentioned this earlier, I always had to win everything I did. I always had to be the best in everything I did. I always had to conquer everything I tried to conquer. And with meditation and Buddhism, which all is really nothing more than getting to know the nature of my own mind, there's no winning.
Yeah.
So it was like you were talking earlier about how God has funny ways of throwing things at us. They're like, all right, Jeff, you beat this one, right? You can't win.
The ultimate Rubik's cube.
Right.
that the colors keep changing.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
That would actually, yes, exactly. That's a good metaphor. So that's where, for my personal practice, I love it because you never stop and say, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
It's not a 6-week course. It's not like I've gone through some training and I'm done. It's an everyday practice. So in my personal life, I love sharing it with people who are brand new and getting them started, and then motivating and inspiring people who've done it to keep doing it. Yeah. And in that process, it's also continuing to reinforce. When I hear people, the guy this morning about I was driving in the traffic and that's how it's helping me calm down, like that's continuing to motivate and inspire me to keep my practice going. And once you stop and think like I've got it, no, you're done. You got it. You got to keep going.
Well, and that's the nice thing is that if today you don't feel like you did a great job at it, you've always got either later today or tomorrow, and you always have more opportunities to practice it. And that's kind of a nice, comforting feeling that I don't have to be great at this. I don't have to be able to shut my mind down, and that's really not even the point of it, like you had mentioned, because it doesn't really happen. And you're right, because when I first had kind of been introduced, I think kind of from you, and I had I think I tried it a little bit before on my own, but then the first guided was I sat in one of yours.
Years ago,
and I kind of was so clueless. I thought all those crazy thoughts that are going around my head are supposed to go away and stop and clear out, and it's like, no, you just learn to sit while that's all happening.
Yes.
And it's really funny because my wife is half Indian, and her dad is from Mumbai, formerly Bombay, and a lot of his family is still over there. So we went over and visited, and when we were over in India, I can think in terms of meditation, it was very much like a real life experience of what meditation is. It's like being calm amongst the chaos, because there are a billion people there. I would always joke hey, I'm just going to go behind this bush to take a pee, and then you go behind the bush and there's 5 people behind the bush hey, how's it going? You're like, oh man, there's people everywhere and you can't escape it. And so I'd be there and being and I had to learn that I just have to breathe. And we would do that in the morning. Her auntie would have this whole ritual, and you give peace offerings and do all this stuff. And it was really neat to experience that, because then as I sought out for my day out there, I was a lot calmer knowing, there's just going to be people all around, and I'm a typical American guy. I'm give me my space, man. I need some property, and so
when fence up, everybody stay out. I'll let you know when I want to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly, and that's my mindset. So going over there, it was learning that and having to just kind of experience that and be calm within the storm.
Yes.
And I think meditation is an amazing thing for that. I did find a good spot in India where there were no people. And oddly enough, it was in Rishikesh. We went to the Beatles ashram.
Oh, very cool.
And I'm thinking, place is going to be packed too. And that was like the only spot where there was like no one there.
That's great.
I'm going, wow, I'm blown away because it was amazing. They had written like, a whole bunch of songs there, and it was cool. If you remember that number nine, we went into like one of the huts and it had a number 9 on it.
Wow.
And that was apparently from the
That's
Beatles
right.
thing there. So it was pretty neat to experience that too. And that's where I found my space.
And I think it's important for people, it's like when people say to me, they're like, Jeff, haven't you ever had any magical experience? Like, hasn't anything ever happened to you? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
All that's ever happened to me is I've realized what an idiot I am and what a greedy, angry person I've been most of my life.
But
I wouldn't call that mystical or magical. I would just call that waking up to the craziness of my own mind and then trying to change that. And I think there's a balance where, because for the most part, at least with the world I interact with, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're lay people living in society with families and jobs and those types of things. So I think there's a balance between being able to bring the meditation practice into everyday aspect of your life, and also finding quiet time, I do think is important, especially early on as you're developing a practice, to find time to, even if it's 5 minutes, to walk outside, to go sit on a curb somewhere, to lock yourself on in the bathroom. Mom a couple years ago, she said, Jeff, there's only one quiet place that I get, and that's in the bathroom. And I'm like, well, then put that toilet seat down and sit there in a proper posture and just close your eyes and take some deep breaths. And so she started doing it there. So a balance of meditation in everyday life, but then finding some pretty beautiful places to go sit is also, I think, helpful.
Well, and that brings up a great point that reminded me of like when I was first getting sober. I finally learned the serenity prayer.
Yeah.
And so what I would do is, when I was all out of sorts and feeling triggered and I'm going to do some drugs or I want to do this, I'd go to the bathroom and I'd sit there on top of the toilet and I'd say the serenity prayer over and over and over again. And that's because I didn't really understand how to meditate.
Right.
But it was like that was my form of beginning the process of meditation, because all I knew was a serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Yeah. And I'd go. And when I first got sober, I couldn't get 3 of those words out. And I was like, I don't know what it is. My brain was all scrambled, and then I learned that, and that helped. What it did is it just gave me a second to breathe and to be okay with whatever it was. And in the beginning, I had to remove myself from those situations that would trigger and that would make me feel so out of sorts. And now, as time's going, it depends on the day, of course, but on the good days where you're connected and feeling right, you can sit there within that storm and not be triggered and not be thrown off so bad. And now incorporating meditation into my life, I'm hooked, man. It's a really cool thing, and like you said, it's not like this burning bush moment, but it is like, oh, now I look forward to it, and there is a calmness starting to really happen, and it's become a part of a habit for me that I'm looking forward to having each day, and sometimes twice a day, and because whenever you need it. And I think that's the nice part. And you realize, like, this morning we did 20 minutes, and you realize how little bit of time 20 minutes is in your whole day. You have so many opportunities for that 20 minutes, and even when you first start, if it's 1 minute, if it's 2 minutes, if it's this, you have those opportunities. And that's the nice thing that I also learned as a process of the recovery, was like, you can always start your day over.
Exactly.
So if you're in those moments and you're feeling like, I just want to, like, I just want to lose my mind on everybody. It's like, all right, start over.
The daily practice is critical. It's like, we don't wait till our teeth fall out to start brushing.
Well,
hopefully not. You don't wait till your engine light blows up. Hopefully not to change oil.
I'm one of those.
But so that's the idea, is to try to take care of it, the mind, as maintenance, no different than anything else we take care of. And if we're doing it every day, we know every day is going to bring so much chaos and so many challenges and so many obstacles. And I mean, what it's like 2 o'clock or whatever time it is right now, you got all day. And you know how many people are going to do things today that you're just not going to like?
Yeah.
Like it's endless,
Yeah.
I don't even know if you're driving back to LA today, but if you're driving from San Diego to LA, you know how many things are going to happen
Oh,
in
I
the next
know.
5 hours of your life?
It was funny. The guy today at the meditation goes, if something like, if once I get in my car and then I go here, you go, somebody might steal your shoes at the shoe rack before you even get to the car.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's hilarious. Yeah.
And that's where the daily practice becomes easier, and this is really what you're talking about. It becomes easier to kind of default or drop into that calmer, quieter state where eventually nothing really triggers you.
Yeah.
You recognize the anger as it's arising in you, and you recognize that it's just a passing thought, and you can either act on the anger or let it pass. And that one quick moment, depending upon the situation, can drastically change your life and the life of those around you.
Absolutely.
The one going into prison for 15 years. You know how many people in there tell me, like, if I just thought for one more second before I
then you
did
wouldn't
something,
have to be,
wouldn't be there
in that situation. And the funny thing is, like, I do that, like, and I learned that from my practice in my recovery of just constantly, like, more will be revealed.
Right.
And what I know that I do is I like to walk into a room, take a little like chaos bomb and throw it in there and see what happens, because hey, it's fun. It's actually awful because it really wears me out and it becomes this whole thing. But what I've learned is that is an opportunity for my disease of alcoholism to present itself and go, hey, I really like when his world's in chaos because then maybe he'll get drunk.
Definitely.
And so I become aware of those things and so developing all of these kind of ways to basically, like you said, take care of your mind and your emotions.
And you're cutting through behavioral patterns, addictions, and I don't mean just from an alcohol, but behavior addictions that we've really cultivated and practiced in our personalities and in our beings our entire life. And so that's where, to me, call it meditation, call it Buddhism, call it a spiritual path, whatever you want to call it, early on, as I was talking about earlier, it doesn't make it easier. Like, it makes your life difficult, because when you stop to recognize what a pain you are, or what an angry person you are, or what a mean person you are, or what a disruptive person you are, and that's just been your default mechanism for so many years, this path and this practice makes you look at that and say, I really need to change this.
Yeah.
And that's not fun.
Right.
It's not easy. It's a lot easier to go into the room and disrupt everything.
Yeah.
And just sit back and think, I caused this problem. And to change that, and that's why, for me, this practice, it's every day. Like, you have to work on every day changing the thought patterns that you've created throughout your entire life, and that's a lot of work.
Exactly, and it requires a lot of action,
Yes.
and we say that a lot. Action is the magic word, but in order to take those actions, I think you need to, need to be able to recognize and become aware. And like you said, it makes
you can't just meditate, right? It's one of my favorite expressions. Is people think that if you meditate, everything's, I'm a meditator, everything's better. No, if you're an angry person and you meditate, you're just an angry meditator. Right? You have to do things in your life that make you less of an angry person. The meditation is not the be all end all. It's not the quick fix.
Right.
It makes you become aware of the behavior patterns that we then can work on changing.
No, and that's amazing. And so I wanted to get into a little bit of the Dharma Bums Temple, because what I watched all of you guys do, and I know, I know you specifically, but I know that there's a lot of great energy behind what is happening here. And I watched you raise an incredible amount of money to get yourself a home as far as a temple. And we're sitting here in the temple right now, and it's just amazing to watch it work, because I said something to you downstairs a little bit, and I was saying something to Asha. It's like, it's really cool because you took this path in life, and I said, like, when my brother was like, I don't know what Jeff's up to, like, it's kind of weird, and then And then he realized, like, you were finding yourself and you were finding your path, and then but like anyone in the beginning, you're skeptical. What's going on with him? Is he all right? And
He's
then
come off the deep end.
and then you realize, oh, he's actually found his path and his purpose, and then he's the first one to get behind and go, no, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, you're going, well, my best friend is like, he's becoming a monk or something.
Right.
Like, I don't know, you know.
I put a damper on our Vegas trips. I'll put it
Yeah. I've been
Actually,
on those.
Put an end
Vegas
to our
trips.
Vegas trips early.
Yeah,
It's like, well, you don't do this anymore. You don't do this anymore. You don't do this anymore. I guess there's no need to go to Vegas.
Yeah, well, that's probably a good thing, I think, for all of us involved.
Yes.
But yeah, I watched kind of that happen with you and the evolution of that. But what I was going to say is that I watched something happen within you, and it was cool to realize, because it's something to aspire to and to implement into my own practices and my own life, is to have the faith that it will work the way it's supposed to work, and letting go of the results, letting go of what is going to happen and all that, because you basically allowed yourself to let go and let life itself take care of you.
Yes.
And I've watched, and I mean, this is just my outside perspective, but I've watched like the universe take care of you.
Definitely.
In an incredible way.
Yes.
Because we're sitting in this amazing temple.
Yeah.
And we're doing meditation, and you are helping so many people, and they're helping you in return. And we talked about that, how it's taking care of yourself in order to be able to take care of other people, and it's just so neat to watch the universe take care of someone when they just trust that it will. And I'm blown away by that, because a lot of times I struggle with that. I struggle with, like, is it going to be okay if I don't just control it all and try and make it the way I want it? You know, and I realize whenever I try and make it the way I want it, it never goes that way. It's the tell God your plans and he'll laugh at you kind of thing. And it's true. And so it kind of reverts back to when you mentioned, like, I had my life planned out. I had this, I was going to do this, I was going to do this. And look at it now, like, how different it is and how far from that plan it's gone. But imagine if God or the universe, or whatever you want to call it, like, imagine if they just let the, if they just let that go according to your plan, how much less you would have experienced, and how short you would have sold yourself.
Definitely.
By just going, I want it to be this way and that way and this way, rather than giving in to the infinite wisdom of the universe and allowing it to kind of take you in the direction that you're going. And I just find that amazing to witness it as a friend of yours, having seen the evolution and seeing continue to grow and change as it is. It's just so cool to watch that and go, this person is like, maybe they're not fearless, but they have the courage to allow that to happen and to follow kind of where it takes them, and it's been neat to see that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's it's funny when we start, so we were, brief context, but when we were downtown with Dharma Bums for 10 years, everything with Dharma Bum Temple is free, everything with Meditation Initiative is free, right? Like, nobody's making money off of any of this stuff, everything's free, we don't ask for donations. And so we start Dharma Bums end of 2006, and we run in this tiny little 1,100 square foot loft downtown, like 50 people upstairs, and I'm always afraid the loft was going to, like, crash. And then we get an opportunity to buy this 90-year-old church that was going to get torn down and turned into condos, and we had to raise basically $500,000 in 3.5 months. And so when I got hooked up to a good commercial realtor here, and I said, we want to buy this old church. And it was actually funny. My mom, Jewish mother, she's like, I never thought I'd say this to my Jewish son, but I hope you buy that church.
Yeah.
And actually, I always say this, I've never been a religious person until we pulled off this place. So it's like, Jewish kid, Buddhist, in a Christian church is ridiculous, right? Like,
right.
And this is where I was like, there's something else out there, because, so when the realtor, John Jarvis, he said, how much money you guys have? This is end of 2016 at Dharma Bum Temple. And I was like, we got $7,000. And again, in Dharma Bum dollars, it's like Monopoly money. Like that's millions.
Yeah.
That was millions
We're
of dollars.
sitting
for us.
on a
We're sitting
pretty stack.
We got at least 3 months rent in the bank. We're solid.
Yeah.
And it took us like 10 years to get to that point. And he said, you're going to need $100,000 to open escrow. And I'm like, we'll get it. He was like, Jeff, you have $7,000.
We got it.
We got it. Don't worry. Right? So we put in the offer.
Bet on black. Going back to Vegas.
And that's actually, people joked about that. You know? They're like, just put it all on red or whatever. So the funny thing is, so we started the campaign, and in the first 14 days, and it's not about the money, but in the first 14 days, to the banks, it is about the money.
Right. Some people,
14,
that
it doesn't matter how Buddhist you are, like, banks want money.
Yeah.
And
there's Buddha just cashing $1 million check.
It doesn't, So we raised $321,000 from, or I'm sorry, $103,000 from 321 people in the first 14 days. So 14 days, $100,000 from 321 people, and we opened escrow. And the cute thing at that time was like, yeah, we did it. We bought the church. I'm like, no, we just opened escrow. We need to raise. It was 35% of the property. We needed to raise $490,000. And the funny thing about the campaign was, I don't think, other than my mother and Maggie, anybody thought we would actually pull this off. My father too, probably.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, we hope this happens. We want it to happen. We're all going to contribute to make it happen. But I don't think anybody really thought this little group that had no money could raise $500,000 in whatever, to 108 days. And we did. And it was 1,123 people that donated to get that money. And the most beautiful thing about it was, it was a collective effort, and what happened was, someone said to me, well, do you have wealthy people in your community? I said, this isn't about wealth. I don't know how much people have, but I know what the heart of this community is. And so everybody, like the college kid that took out $11, actually he took out $1, Ahmad. He took out $1 from his wallet, and he's like, here, I want to contribute to the campaign. And I saw it happen, and as he opened up his wallet and he took out the $1, he noticed that there was a $10 bill there also.
Yeah.
And he was actually the president of our college group, and so he'd take out the $1, he gave me the $1. And then he started to kind of put his wallet away, and then he pulled it out again, and he pulled out the 10.
Yeah.
And I told people that $11 was worth more to me than any donation that we got. I mean, the $80,000 one was nice. Was the deal. But the $11 was so beautiful because college kid, no money. Here's he's living on top ramen.
Yeah, that $10 is gonna last the whole week.
That's a whole week.
Yeah.
But he knew how important building a place like this was for the community.
Yeah.
And even though it's a Buddhist temple, there's really not Buddhists here. It's a peaceful place for people from all races, all gender identities, all sexual orientations, all religions, all cultures, all walks of life can just come together and be in a peaceful, quiet place where we don't talk about religion, believe it or not. We don't talk about politics, right? And if you remove those two topics from the table, you can actually get along.
And you can actually be calm.
Be calm.
Yeah,
So,
but that's a beautiful thing that it just brings humanity together.
Absolutely.
And all of those labels of you're this or that or this or that are all kind of set aside for that just that connection.
Absolutely.
I think that's incredible. And I think obviously, like, I'm not trying to save the world, but we absolutely need more of that.
Yeah.
And that we're lacking that a little bit. I'm lacking that, and I'll take responsibility for myself and not worry about what other people are doing. But I'm lacking that, and I need to be more that way. And that's a nice reminder.
Yes, and I think that a place like this is there to not. It's funny because people often show up here and I'm like, why are you here? And they say, well, I want to learn about Buddhism. And I always ask them, well, how much you know about yourself? And they're like, yeah. And I always tell them that, well, all Buddhist practice is holding up a mirror.
Yeah.
And all this is doing is it's looking back at yourself. It's reflecting on what can we do as individuals to make this a safer, healthier environment and world.
I was going to say, it's kind of like getting married.
There you go. You got to look back at you and say,
that mirror comes
what is
up.
this argument really about? And you recognize, like, yep, I'm wrong again.
But,
wait, once in a while, nope, I'm wrong again. So it's taking responsibility on your shoulders. And, once we solidified this place, and we've been here now 14, 15 months, and being able to just continue as a free place for everybody to come, that's what we want people to recognize, is not to come here to become Buddhist, but to come here and be closer to who they are. During that whole campaign, when you're raising all that money, there's no guarantee that it's all going to work out, but you have that ultimate faith and that ultimate trust that, like, I always say that campaign was the greatest practice I ever had to do, because I had to stay so focused, so present, so just intention. And I'm not saying I'm a pure person, but my intention had to be so pure. And every second there was something I had to do to make sure this all came together, a million moving parts, and at the same time knowing it could all fall apart at any moment.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get lost in the story of what if it doesn't happen, what if you don't do this, you just keep going with every thought, every intention, every word, every action in a positive, healthy direction, and you let go, and you almost have complete faith and trust in the universe that everything is going to work out.
Yeah.
However it's supposed to work out, and letting go of control, dude, for me as a human being, I mean, I try to control everything my entire life, and I was pretty good at it.
I know.
And that's what makes it worse, is when you're good at it, it just is even that much harder.
Right. And I think that's a huge challenge for me. It's in one of my character defects when I went through my step work and did that stuff. Because, like you said, like my self-will does make things happen.
Yes.
So it's hard to go, I've got to align my will with my higher power's will and do that and go, oh, that's hard to figure that out, because when I just say, no, get it done, and then I do that and it works.
Right.
So there is that, finding that
There's
balance.
a balance.
Yeah.
I actually remember, it's like, when you're pushing to raise that much money in a short period of time, and Travis, who's been around for years, he was like, Jeff, I've never heard you ask for money in 7 years. I'm like, yeah, well, for the next 3.5 months, get used to it.
That's all
we get
you're
a lot
gonna
of it
hear.
very quickly, right?
Yeah.
But I remember someone saying to me one time, they were, the campaign was pushed pretty hard, and a few people didn't love the fact that we were pushing so hard to raise this money, but it's what we had to do. And I remember someone saying to me, like, Jeff, maybe it's time to, like, turn it over and just have, like, faith in the universe kind of stuff. And that was where I was like, okay, yes, I can have faith in the universe, but if I sit back on my couch and watch TV all day long, another $150,000 is probably not going to show up.
Right.
So there are things that and that's where that balance is different for everybody. Like, coming back to your action thing, you can have faith, you can have trust, you can have the letting go, but I couldn't just sit and eat Cheetos all day long.
Right.
I had to do things, and there's that balance of doing things and not trying to control or manipulate too much.
Right.
And that's a fine line.
Well, and I think it kind of like can relate to like rowing the boat, just not worrying about steering it. Like it's like, something else out there is steering that, but you got to row.
Yes.
And so I think it's that they always talk about easy does it, but do it.
Yeah.
And so,
that's good.
like having to, just hope that you sit on your couch and it magically all appears. That doesn't.
Like if I sit here all day long and meditate and just imagine Ferrari, red outside now, are we done yet? I want to go to my Ferrari.
Yeah.
That Ferrari ain't showing up.
Yeah.
And there are people out there who would tell you and believe that if you do that hard enough and long enough, but you
visualizing
still have to
and
take
stuff.
the actions.
Right.
For that.
Well, and that's what I think.
For the record, I don't want a red Ferrari, but I always did when I was younger.
Right.
I'll just borrow Dave's.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, and then you drove Dave's, and you're like, it's not all it's cracked up.
I don't know how to drive stick anyway.
Yeah.
So.
but it brings up good point because you do hear a lot about visualization, and I do believe that what it can do is not. You can't visualize, hey, I get the red Ferrari, and then the red Ferrari shows up. It's more of you visualize yourself where you want to be, and I don't think that necessarily means material things.
Definitely.
But you visualize where you want to be, and if that means happy, and if happy means that your marriage is going really well, and you're enjoying yourself, and you're exercising and taking care of yourself, and you're calm within, that visualizing that stuff isn't a great thing.
Absolutely.
And even if it does come to the material things, and you say, I would like a home so that I can raise a family and those things. Visualizing, I think, can start the process, sort of like how meditation makes you aware. Visualization can start the process of how do I get there, but without taking action on that visualization, it will never come to pass.
Right.
And so at least that's part of the thought process that I was having.
Yeah, that's the old Stephen Covey, when he first did 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, that was one of the 7 steps, was to begin with the end in mind. And when I was an old business corporate person, that was always, and then I just translated it into my life. And to me, that's very similar, that yes, I can imagine what it's like at the end result. And I think that as a something to work towards and to visualize what it would be like. Like I used to visualize what it would be like for all of us to be in this space.
Yeah.
And that's what I did before we even started trying to get it. You know, I had to visualize what is it going to be like in here? Do we want it? Is it going to be healthy? Is it going to succeed? Is it going to thrive?
Yeah.
So I think you have to some extent imagine and visualize what something will be like at the end, because like you said, that is what's going to motivate you, inspire you to work so hard to make it happen.
Well, it's pretty incredible because we're sitting in here right now.
Yeah, honestly, it's still, every day I walk in this place and I'm still amazed that we pulled it off, and it's been 14, 15 months now.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's I think it's got to be, you know, a lot of gratitude to kind of be able to be here. And you explained along the way for me all that people have contributed.
Everything.
And, you know, it's amazing to see a community come together and say, we want this. And you know what? I'm going to help out. And I've got men that can help build some things.
Yes.
I've got people that have stuff for, you know, for the temple, and it's really neat to see. Like, it's a refreshing feeling to see how people come together.
Yes, and they love to take care of, you know, to me, building community is, they get a lot out of this space, you know, and you know that the adult classes, we have family classes, we have a huge recovery community here, we have prison outreach, homeless outreach, so there's so many wonderful programs, and so obviously people that come here benefit from that, but a big part of the way this is set up is, we don't have a master, there's no head monk or nun, we're not like serving, you know, a higher, you know, person sitting up there that's like looking down on everyone, and what that means is everybody here has to take care of the space. So if the bathroom's a mess, there's no cleaning crew that's coming in at 11 o'clock to clean the bathroom. Yeah. And it creates an environment where the community is taking care of the space, and then they take ownership of it. Their heart is there, they've cleaned it, they've taken care of it, they've given back to it, you know, in supporting it in whatever way that works for them. And that, I think, keeps a strong, safe space.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I was thinking that of like, if there is no one kind of being the head honcho, it does make everyone feel a part of and take ownership. And that is true in my recovery program. There's no government. There's nobody. We're all doing that together, and I think that really it does. It encourages you to want to do those things rather than, you know, trashing the bathroom and going, somebody will get it. You think about it's more than mindfulness practice of like being mindful of you know your surroundings and what kind of footprint you're leaving.
Definitely.
But yeah, I appreciate you sitting down and chatting with me, man. It's like I said, it's been really cool to see the evolution.
Nice, man.
And to watching you raise that money to make this happen was like, whoa, that's a crazy amount of money, and this is all happening, and it's neat to see that. Like I said, just witnessing kind of the universe having your back, and just pushing it for the greater good, and I feel like I get to reap the benefits because I come down and hang out and do a meditation with you.
And there really was that moment where I said, like, even with this place, like I had the keys before I should have had the keys. Yeah. We were in here before we should, like, there were, and you know, the reverend of the Swedenborgian congregation, he's a, you know, Christian mystic, but also got into Buddhism. Like there were so many things happening in this space that I was like, Maggie and I say this all the time, like, it was almost like it's already done. Yeah. You know, the Swedenborgs had this for 89 years as a spiritual place. Actually, D.T. Suzuki wrote a book in the 1900s titled Swedenborg Buddha of the North. Swedenborg lived in the 1700s. So the practice of the Swedenborg faith, according to D.T. Suzuki, was very similar to Zen Buddhist practice. So I felt very comfortable when we tried to get this place. But the moment we walked in, we just felt like, in a way, it's already done. We just have to kind of let the ego and self get out of the way, take that action we've already talked about. And I kept telling myself, Jeff, don't screw it up.
Yeah, well, because you said let the ego get out of the way. Like, that's not easy.
That's not easy. Like, don't screw it up. Like, you got to take these steps. But I really did feel like there was something going on in this place that said, we don't want more condos here. This needs another 100 years of life as a spiritual place for the community. And so whatever that was, that took
Right.
over here and
Yeah.
kicked me out of the way. Thank you
Right.
very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Do it
Yeah.
more often.
Oh, that's cool. That's very cool, man. And I'm proud of you
Thanks,
for
man.
for going down the journey that
Thanks, brother.
you knew you needed to go down, and
Thanks.
that's cool.
And I love you much, and
Yeah.
your journey's been inspiring as well. Not easy to unplug from the world you were
Yeah.
in and get on this journey and this path, because a lot of people go down that end and they don't come out.
Yeah.
They really don't.
I do
I've seen
feel very blessed, very grateful for from coming out of that other end.
Yes.
And it's neat. It's cool to be on this ride with
For
you, man.
sure, absolutely.
Cool.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.